Hey, language fam! Excuse me, still recovering from my cold. Talking about something that either thrills you or gives you flashbacks to grading essays at midnight: student writing. But before you reach for the red pen in your emergency chocolate stash, don't worry, we're keeping it fun, fast, and CI friendly. Today we're digging into how to turn "I don't know what to write" into "Profe, can I write another story about a llama on TikTok?" It's writing, but make it comprehensible and chaos-free. Well, mostly. Stick around, because when we come back from this short video, we'll dive right into making writing feel less like a chore and more like storytelling with a purpose. We'll be right back after this quick clip. And we're back. How is everybody doing? I hope you're enjoying your summer break. It's amazing being with you here today. And today we're talking about writing fluency. So let's first talk about free writing. So with free writing with comprehensible input, we want to encourage fluent expression. We're not working on things like perfection, because perfection isn't what it's not spontaneous. They have to go through and make lots of edits. And we're trying to be away from that. We want to get the fluency out. That's the rate of words that come out. And excuse me, I'm sorry. My number one go-to for this are timed free writes. So set a timer for 3, 5, 10 minutes and have students write nonstop in the target language. No erasing, no stopping. Just get the ideas out. Now, I like to do this in a couple different ways. For my level ones, I don't start until the 3rd month of school. So that would be right around November for me if I'm teaching full year. We would start in August. So August, September, October, and then November we'd be first starting. For all other levels, levels 2 and up, I start that first week. Now, my current school, we teach on what's called a 4x4 block. And if you're not familiar, we do 2 academic school years in 1 calendar year. So we do first semester is 1 academic year. Second semester is a 2nd academic year. Kids only take 4 classes per semester, and we cover a year's content in 20 weeks. In that instance, and for level 1, I start my writing at the 5th week. And I start with what I call training wheels. It's my 1, 3, and 10 minute quick writes. Now, I'm not exactly sure where I got this. I'm going to credit the Comprehensible Classroom because I think that's where I got it from. But if I'm wrong, please correct me in the chat or in the comments. Um, and I'll be sure to give the proper credit where credit is due. I just know I didn't come up with the idea, but it is it's a good idea, and so I do it. So how that works is I have kids write whatever they want for 1 minute straight. Then they count up the words. Then we go through and then we do it for 3 minutes. But the difference is they're going to recopy what they wrote for the first minute, and then they're going to add to it until the 3 minute timer comes up. Then they're going to count their words. Then we're going to do it one more time, and this is at 10 minutes. So I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes. They're going to copy what they wrote for the 3 minute write and then add to it until the timer goes off. So we do that a couple times to get them used to that, to help them through that. But why do I love these? I absolutely, positively love these because there is no time for editing, and what I get is their pure writing fluency ability. I can see where they're at. I can see where they're comfortable. If they're consistently writing the same story, then guess what? That tells me they're not pushing the envelope. They're not trying to get better. They're just staying in a comfort zone. And that gives me information about where their fluency is, because confidence has a lot to do with that. So this is my go-to. I love this. I do this every week once we start. So when I do it all year, it's 10 months of quick writes. If it is my 20 weeks, we have 20 weeks worth of them to get them where they are. Now, I do mine at 10 minutes when I start, and when the class average hits 100 words, I drop the time by 30 seconds with the goal of being 5 minutes at an average of 100 words by the end of the year. When I taught year round, not year round, when I say year round, a regular traditional school year, that usually happens somewhere between winter break and spring break. When I've been doing this 20 weeks, it hasn't happened yet. I think it's just too short of a time for them to really get going on that, because even though it is a block, it's not like I do it twice a week. I do it only once a week, so they're not hitting it, because 20 weeks really is right around that Christmas, what am I supposed to say? Christmas, New Year's time. So it's not right at that point where the time would hit that 5 minutes in a traditional school year. But I still do it. I still incentivize my students to get the best times that they can, and it's my really go-to there. If any of you also, this is a go-to, or you regularly do this in your classroom, please go ahead and put a 1 in the chat or in the comments so that I know you like timed free writes as well. Now, when it comes to them, I also intervene, because when I do my timed writes, sometimes it's a complete free write where they can write about whatever they want that's school appropriate. I absolutely do that for the first 3 that they do per year, and then I do it about once a month after that. I mix it up with some type of prompts. So one of the prompts that I do is vocabulary based. So whatever vocabulary we're working on, I will put up there 5 to 10 words and have them include 3 to 5 of those in their quick writes. But an alternative type of prompt is a picture prompt, which I want to talk about next. So here, I'll give some type of a picture that I know they can write about. It includes vocabulary that we've been working on or that they're familiar with, and then they can write a short story based on what they see. I don't often give them more than one picture, but if I were to do that, it'd be no more than 3 or 4, kind of like in a comic strip format. But that's what I like to do. I used to, before ChatGPT, I used to search funny pictures up on the internet. But now that ChatGPT is there and it does some really good images, both realistic and comic, I can have them create the kind of picture that I want. For example, on our final exam we just had a couple of weeks ago, I wanted my kids to talk about a picture. I know we're talking about writing, but it works the same way. But I told ChatGPT for my level ones that I needed to have students in a classroom with a variety of school supplies and a variety of clothing with different colors, because those were the themes that my school used for level one. So it created me an image, and then my kids could talk about however they wanted. For level two, I did something similar, but the themes were transportation, restaurant, and places in the city and family. So I had him draw a picture about that. Both were comic based. I didn't make them realistic, but I could have made them realistic. I know that Birkenstocks and for girls and Crocs for guys are really popular. So my level one with clothes, I made sure my picture had Crocs and Birkenstocks. So it worked really, really well. I had a good picture and I could reuse that. So I highly recommend ChatGPT for creating images for either writing prompts or speaking prompts. And you can even ask ChatGPT to make a comic strip type prompt as well. So it comes out with like 3 or 4 related images in a story. Another way to do free writing is a daily write and reflect. Have students review and highlight the words, phrases they used correctly, identifying patterns in their growth. Now, this is going to be a mixture of target language and classroom language, meaning the language of instruction. So in the United States, that's usually English, but if you're in France, it's going to be French, obviously. Germany, you're going to be German, whatever it is. So there's going to be a mixture in there, but they're going to be reflecting upon that, but they're going to be thinking about patterns in words and phrases that they can do. Next, let's go ahead and talk about collaborative writing. So for here, excuse me. So here we're working on students or small groups or whole class or partners coming together to build proficiency together. And so this can be a really fun type of activity for your students to do, and you get some really fun stories out of this. First, there's the whole class story creation. So we guide students in co-writing a story by contributing sentences as a class. And we build on each other's ideas while staying comprehensible. And there's 2 ways that I do this. I need to teach them how to build a story. So we'll do this together as a whole class with me directing them. Meaning there are 4 parts to a story. There is character, problem, failure, success. Every story in history, whether it be a traditional story, a fairy tale, a folk story, a sitcom, a movie, a book, all follow that scenario. Establish a character, give them a problem or a conflict, have them try to solve the problem and fail, and then succeed. Now, the failure part, depending on how long the story is, might happen multiple times, like in a movie or a long novel. In a short story, in a sitcom, those are probably not going to have multiple problems there that they fail at solving. So I start them right off the bat. And so I'll ask them leading questions in the target language to build a story together. They give me the ideas based on the answers. I write it down and then they copy it in their notebooks. That's the training part so they can see how it works. Character, problem, failure, success. That's the really important part. Once we've done that, and we've done that a couple of times so that they're understanding, because I'm asking them in the target language, what kind of character are we going to have? Are we going to have a person, an animal, or an object? Let's describe it. What is it? Big? Is it small? Is it medium? Where does it live? How old is it? What's its name? What's its color? What does it look like? All of those things to build that character. Then once we have that character built, then I'm going to ask, what is their problem? I'm going to take some ideas from the class. We're going to vote on them, and then we're going to put that problem down there. They're going to go, oh no, there's a problem. We're going to state what the problem is. We're going to take some sentences to describe what that problem is, why it's problematic. And then I'm going to say, okay, what does the character do to try to solve the problem? And we get some ideas there. We vote, we elaborate, we write it down, and then we find a way to solve the problem. That's what we work through. But once they've got that training, then every kid will have a piece of paper, and we'll usually sit in a circle. And then I will give the kids 1 or 2 minutes to write one sentence down. So this is the what was there. Is there an animal, an animal, a person, or an object? Give us what it is, and then we pass the papers either to the right or to the left. And then the next person's going to add to that by adding a description of what they look like, or their age, or their name. And then we're going to swap papers again and rotate papers around so that a kid is writing one sentence. They're reading what's already there. They're writing a new sentence, and we can scaffold this because I'll tell them, okay, we're writing now an age sentence. We're writing now a description sentence, etc., etc., etc. And then we can have that whole story going all the way around. And by the time it gets back to the first person who started it, we have a really juicy story starting. And it might take 2 or 3 rounds to get it completed. But when we're done, we have 30 or so stories that we can have, that we can add to our class library, our repertoire of writing, and they get some good practice in there. And it's a fun way to do that kind of activity. So I love that particular activity. Peer editing is another one, but you want to give them scaffolded feedback. So pair students to give structured feedback on content and meaning, rather than just on grammar corrections. And so what you want to do here is you want to scaffold this. You want to keep it positive and constructive without judgment, and you can give them some sentence starters to help them, some sentence frames to get them to think more deeply about it. For example, something like, I really liked, and one suggestion for next time would be, and have them focus on only one thing to grow on, because trying to focus on too many things is never going to work. So we want to have them focus on one thing for next time, and when they've improved that one thing, which might take 2 or 3 weeks, then we can go ahead and have them focus on something else. And I like to always start out with 2 positives and then 1 constructive. I don't like to sandwich it like the, what do they call the sandwich criticism, where you have a positive, then the constructive criticism, and then the positive. I rather just give 2 positives and then the construction feedback so they can really think about that. But it's written without a judgment, and by giving sentence frames and sentence starters, it's a great way to keep them focused and keep it positive so they can actually use it to grow on. And we're working on focusing on the content and the meaning, not just on the grammar corrections. Because think about it in real life. If you are interacting with someone whose English, or whatever your home language is not their first language, and they make grammar mistakes, we don't correct them on their grammar mistakes. That's considered rude. If we understood what they said and we can act upon it as is, we let it go, because the focus is on meaning. if what they said was mixed up enough to where we're not exactly sure what they meant, we usually ask in a polite way to repeat themselves, like, I'm sorry I didn't get that, or could you repeat that, or something to that effect. But again, it's not criticism and we're not correcting. They'll usually rephrase and then the meaning happens. So that's what we want to focus on because that's real life. Grammar corrections don't happen in the moment. They happen from hearing and reading correct language over and over and over, not from knowing and applying a grammar rule. Another suggestion using collaborative writing is a sentence expansion challenge. Give a basic sentence and challenge students to build on it collaboratively to add more detail and complexity. So you might give a sentence like, there is a girl, and then have them come up with 3 different versions, adding more information each time so that they're building on the sentences and getting them to be bigger. Then you can even challenge them, have a competition in class, and kids love competitions. But you can have them compete with who can come up with the longest, most grammatically correct sentence without it being like a run-on sentence. So again, you're not looking here at complete accuracy, but you want it to be somewhat in the ballpark of accurate. And see how many words they can give, because they can learn how to write bigger and bigger sentences. You can also do this with our round robin type thing again, where you have a basic sentence and then everybody passes to the right and now rewrite that sentence and add 2 additional words to it to make it longer. And then rewrite the same, pass it along, rewrite the sentence, adding 1 more word and a because, and finish the because, etc., 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 to get them to learn to write more complex sentences. And next, let's go on to guided writing. We kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but guided writing prompts for advanced structures. So here, you're going to give them prompts that lead to them using some more advanced structures. For example, you can start with some story starter prompts. Provide half of a story and then challenge students to complete it using key structures they've been exposed to. So you can give them a story and then give them up to the problem and then have them finish the story from there. You can tell them to use a particular structure we've been working on. Maybe we've been working on is going to do. So what we call the immediate future, or has to do. One of those things, they can work on that. Or maybe we're working on a particular tense. Maybe we're working on the present progressive and you want them to use that. Tell them what you want them to use, but give them the story part up to the problem and let them continue from the problem on. Another idea, sentence frames for complexity. So provide scaffolds like, if I had known, I would have, to help students form advanced sentence structures. I do this with my level 3s. I want to introduce the conditional, but in order to do that, for a lot of things in Spanish, I also have to introduce the past subjunctive. But I'm not trying to teach the past subjunctive right now. It's a complication I don't really need. So I give them 2 phrases that I want them to use in the past subjunctive that would lead towards the conditional, which is what I really want to focus on. So I have, if there were, so hubiera, and if I had, tuviera. So then they can add the conditional afterwards to complete the sentence. So I could say, si hubiera una araña, ¿Qué harías? If there were a spider, what would you do? Or, si tuvieras un hipopótamo como mascota, ¿qué harías? If you had a hippo as a pet, what would you do? You can give all kinds of those if, would questions in there. Give them some sentence frames so they can go ahead and dive deeper into that. And they can really practice that. And I have it easy in Spanish because the conditional is really easy. I just tell them, make the verb rhyme with diarrhea. I know, I taught middle school for a long time, but it works because almost all of them sound like or rhyme with diarrhea. So from there, then they can make it. I don't even have to teach how to make it. They can make any verb you tell them into it by making it rhyme with diarrhea and have a pretty good accuracy rate with that. So that's what I use for that. Find a way to get that into your heads in your target language, but that one works really well for me. And lastly, for guided writing, we have the genre-based writing practice. So you can assign different writing formats, whether it be an email, a formal and informal letter, a blog post, a text message, any of those things to help students develop diverse writing skills. And whenever you're doing this, you want to break it down step by step. So if we're talking about emails or letters, there's usually some kind of greeting that we want to do and a closing that we want to do. And so we talk about formal and informal versions. We talk about the context, the formality overall. An email is generally less formal than a letter, but there are more formal versions of emails versus less formal ones. Sometimes we write emails in place of letters and they need to be a little bit more formal. So they get the practice of doing all of those type things. Blog posts, they need to think about their audience. Who are they writing to? And all these kinds of things give them practice to help students develop different writing skills and writing for different audiences and for different purposes. And that gives them a wide variety of writing practice. So, there you have it. I've given you many writing strategies that don't make your students groan louder than a Monday morning quiz. But heads up, we're starting to switch things up starting in July. So we're going to have a new day and a new time. So mark it in your calendars, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on Sundays, and a fresh new format to keep things spicy and super practical for your classroom. So you don't want to miss what's coming, so make sure you stay tuned. And if you liked what we talked about today and want more CI inspiration, connection, and maybe even a virtual s'more or two, don't forget to grab your spot at CI Summer Camp. It's where serious PD meets summer camp vibes. Check it out at mm.us/summercamp. I'll see you next time, and don't forget your coffee. You're gonna need it. Have a great day and a great week, and I will see you next week. Have a good one, everybody.